Welcome to it. I'm sorry, my old podcast. Welcome to Natural Bliss Podcast for a better quality of life. I am your host, Joyce Wheeler. And today, whatever can go wrong is going wrong, but I'm just going to roll with it and we're going to keep on going. So you want to head over to heavenlybodieswellness.com. We are having a Valentine's Day sale, 20% off site-wide with coupon code Share Love, all capitals. And today is the last day. So you want to get in on that to get your loved ones or yourself or somebody you care about some good wellness products. So yeah, that's that. And today I have with me Robert Kitridge. And he is inherent gifts of intuitive intelligence, sensitivity, and inspired communication, which has led him to be recognized as an influential mentor, coach, trainer, and speaker. His 30 years of fire service prepared him for his outstanding coaching career, incorporating his people, crisis management, and communication skills. He has an innate ability to cut to the heart of someone's core issues, either personally or with leadership and team development, while pass the caring and support his clients need. Robert's transformational journey inspires others around him and adds to his understanding of what motivates and emotionally holds back his clients. His passion for human design theory elevates his insight and knowledge for revealing to his clients their unique design and what it takes to live their true self, separate from what they are conditioned to believe. Robert guides his clients on their unique journeys from a place of highly tuned sensitivity and intuition, backed by a depth of knowledge, resulting in a life of clarity, alignment, and harmony. Robert, welcome to the show.
Oh, welcome, Joyce. I'm glad we can make this work. This is awesome.
Me too. So tell me, how did you get started on this journey with the being intuitive? I mean, were you very young when that came up? And
well, Joyce, we all are. We all have intuition built into us, but many of us, and depending on how we were brought up, that intuition may be squashed. So for me, I was brought up in a very emotionally, physically abusive household, alcohol, which of course, a lot of that is you never talk about what's going on in the house, outside of the house. And as a kid, I always knew something wasn't correct, right? Something wasn't right. But when I'd ask the questions, I was told, no, that's not what you're seeing, or that's not. And after a while as a kid, who do you believe? You or your parents? Because they're supposed to know, right?
Right.
And so for me, my intuition has been one of those intellectual faculties, along with imagination, that I've suppressed over my time until probably 2.5 years ago did I start to realize. Yeah.
Wow, that's a long time. That's years to go without realizing who you are as a human, and the gifts that as humans we truly have.
Right. Yeah.
So did you have siblings?
I did, or I do. I've got some stepsisters and I've got a stepbrother. None of us were really close or anything during our growing up.
So I take it that the step siblings in your life had been a big part of your growing up, it sounds like. Am I correct?
My stepbrother. I did not meet my stepsisters until I was well into like 18, 19 years old. They were involved with my true father, my real father's life on his side.
Got you. So you were a firefighter?
I was, yeah. In about 1982, and I could talk about that. That's when I started my real personal growth journey. I lived in Boulder, Colorado at the time. I was escaping life. And at the time in the 80s, Boulder was a great place to escape life. Let's just say that, between the drugs and all kinds of different stuff that went on back then. I found myself numbing everything because I didn't know what else to do. And I did it unconsciously because I didn't know otherwise, right? You know where I am? And then one night, in 1982 in the back of a police car, and it was nothing. It was actually a really silly story. But I realized, and this is the first time I heard that voice, that inner voice that said, you're better than this. You don't belong here, i.e. the back of a police car. And then I met my second ex-wife. I've got 3 of them. In 1982, and her father was a chief of a fire department. And I got interested and got introduced to it and started as a volunteer, and then worked my way all the way through as I served on a national incident management team. You're in Louisiana, I know. I spent 30 days in New Orleans and Katrina we were on the ground day 2. I've spent time on wildland fires, and then I retired as a fire chief in a volunteer wildland fire organization here in Colorado Springs.
So I'd like to hear that silly story about the cop car. Do you want to share, or would you rather not?
Absolutely, I will. It was, as I said, most of that year I don't remember, because I was either drunk or stoned. I really was. I was numbing that part of my life. And I was coming home one evening about 2 a.m. from a friend's house. And this was the one time I wasn't. I was actually not drunk, not stoned. About 2 a.m, I'm almost to my house, and I pull up on it. And this is a small town north of Boulder, Colorado, small at the time, not small anymore. Pull up to a flashing red light, and I pull up, look, and just kind of drive through. Because I'm thinking, who's awake at 2 a.m. in Longmont,
Right.
Colorado? Well, of course, who's awake is the cops, right? And boop, boop. And when he pulled me over, my house was right there. I could sit in a seat and see my apartment. And he asked me for my driver's license and insurance, and I gave it to him. And I was feeling pretty good, right? I didn't do anything really wrong or anything else. And he comes back, he said, well, Mr. Kitridge, this is great. Everything's good, except do you realize you have a warrant out for your arrest? And I was like, yeah, kind of that look, Joyce. No. A year before, when I was moving to Boulder, I actually got a traffic ticket. And at that time in Boulder County, you had to go to court for that traffic ticket. Well, the week after I moved, and the week after that, I started a job. Life started going, totally blew off the ticket. So
Did you forget about it?
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. I had so much going on in my life that it was like okay, I got a ticket, right? Yeah, let alone the piece of you've got to show up for court.
Right.
So ended up, went to court, paid a small fine. They actually dropped the charge of the speeding because it was a time when radar was just coming out and it was unconstitutional. And yes, I'm that old. So, right. It was a really interesting thing, but it was that turning point for me. Shortly afterwards, a friend of mine who I didn't know really cared about me gave me a book, and it was called, as a matter of fact, I've got it, I still got it. And it was called The Magic Power of the Mind. And I started reading, which was different for me. I was not a reader. I was not a self-help, or I was nothing, but it really started interesting me, the power that the mind has over us. And from there, I've got into coaching, and I've been a coach, and I've been coached, and I'm a speaker. And it's taken a whole lot of different paths.
So what made you read that book? Because it seems to me from the way you were, it's kind of like, well, I really wasn't a reader, but I decided to read this book. Why? Yeah,
great question, Joyce. First and foremost, I respected the guy that gave it to me, right? Okay. That was the first piece. And that's what we do, right? When we respect somebody, we do what they ask, whether it feels right or not, we still do it. And again, in that police car, I heard a voice saying, this is not where you belong. So I kind of figured if I was going to go down the same path, or I maybe had an opportunity to learn something new, I would do that. And I started reading the book. So how did that book change your life or switch your direction of life? Well, I really didn't realize it did until years later. I think what it did was start to awaken this thing of self-growth, of that knowledge, of that inner voice that guides us. This talks about the mind, but the mind is never what guides us. the mind, it's our inner voice that really truly guides us. And I think now, as I look back on it, this was the start of that awareness, of growing awareness of what truly does guide us down our path.
If we listen to it. I was going to an event one day, and I wear moccasins, and it doesn't have the sole, and they're very comfortable. And I was going to an event, there was rain in the forecast, and I'm hearing this voice in my head, take your boots, take your boots. But I want to wear moccasins. We'll just put the boots in the car, put the boots in the car. I didn't listen. So I don't know if you know, but when you have moccasins that don't have a sole on them, your feet get wet.
Yeah, they do.
So after that, I listened to that voice in my head. My husband just recently was working on our greenhouse. And for him, it was a little bit more than just wet feet. He was on the ladder. He had to get up on the ladder. And his inner voice was telling him to get the other ladder because it was more stable. Well, he didn't listen, fell and broke his collarbone.
Yeah.
So, well, I'll take the wet feet.
And Joyce, that's what happens, right? Is because we are not taught to listen to that voice. We are conditioned to listen to the outer authority of others, right? Because they should know better, or they should. So what is this voice? I mean, and again, when I did early on, I was criticized for it. I was, everything else. So eventually you stop, but the voice never stops. It may get shallower, it may get quieter, but the voice never stops. And what I've learned now is it's not only a voice, it's also feelings, depending on in human design. And we can touch on this, but where your authority is in your human design, sometimes it's just an emotional feeling. Sometimes it's a voice. Sometimes it's a knowing. It's you, and getting really in connection with you, then that has you then start down that path. And Joyce, I'll tell you, when I speak, one of the questions I ask is, how many of you have done things you knew you shouldn't have done, but you did it anyway? And I'm right, the hands go up. We all do it. But think about what would happen if we started following our inner knowing, that voice that knows better for us. What would the world be like? I think, wow. I believe in a world that humans are empowered to make choices and decisions from that inner voice, free from the shoulds of the world, right? You should do this, or you should do that, or you better do this. That's all outer authority stuff happening, but it conditions us not to follow this inner voice, this inner knowing. Right.
So some people might call it the higher self. Would you say it's our higher self?
It is. It really truly is. I'm a firm believer that we are created whole and complete. We're resourced. And from a spiritual sense, we are created in the image of, right? So whether that's God, whether that's source, whether that's whatever that is that energy, that source, God, can do nothing but create perfectly. So you're perfect. I'm perfect. Now, our behavior may not be, right? But we are. So that piece of that higher authority is just that. That inner voice is that higher connection to, I like to say, source or God, either one.
Universe.
It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter whatever you call it.
No, it doesn't matter.
But yeah, it is that higher authority. And that's over the last 2.5 years. And it started earlier. I've really started to step back and follow and listen that higher self, because it's there. We've just put a lid on it most of the time.
Right. Have you ever questioned the inner voice? Well, wondering, is this me? Because this is what I want. So I want, I want the universe to say, yeah, you are where you're supposed to be. You're doing what you're supposed to do. And then you step back and you're just like, okay, was that me? Because this is what I want to do. Or was it actually my intuition, my higher self?
Well, here's the thing I've learned is I've stopped questioning, right? Yeah. Is the interesting part is when you start to decondition, because the questioning tends to come from the mind. Now, not my mind, the mind. And
Right.
the mind is really constructed to keep us safe and status quo. So as the voice comes up, and I've now named mine, I call it Marty the mind, right? Marty will go, whoa, what do you mean? Remember the last time you tried that? That's not, blah, 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 blah. And now I say, thank you. Thanks for serving me. And my favorite phrase, and my clients know this, is up until now. Because what that does is that's a pattern interrupt to stop that tape from running and allow me then to listen and really step into contemplation on what I'm hearing from my inner knowing. That's the process I go through when I hear, because it is two voices, right? The mind will speak to you in definite voices, depending on. Yeah.
Right. So you had mentioned human design. And that's something I'm really curious about, because it's something I really don't know a lot about. I've heard about it. I've heard other people speak about it. And I just want to back up for a second, because we were just talking about the mind, and I had just had a guest on a couple of weeks back. Her name is Tenna, and we were talking about the soul and the mind, and how the mind wants to take over and be like, it's about me, forget you, soul. You just go over there and sit down and, forget it. But so I like the interconnection, because the audience is good now hearing it from you. And of course, we need to hear things 7 times before we start to believe it or it registers.
Right.
But the human design, I've heard other people speak about it. I have a friend of mine who's real interested to know what something of mine is, because she knows hers and she's very much into human design. So what exactly is human design?
Yeah, human design is what I call a modality. That's, it's a tool. That's all it is, right? I like to say it's not the truth or a truth. It's a tool. But what I find is it is your truest design on how you're it is your DNA in kind of that God's DNA. That's how I look at it. And it's how we take in energy. It's how we process energy, and it's how we put energy back out into the world. And everyone is absolutely unique. And again, that's part of the world, is we're meant to try to fit into a box, right? Not stand out. And that's been a design, not a big deal. But once you know this, once you know your design, you can start to pull away, kind of call it tweezering out this conditioning. And there's fear gates. So, if something's happening, I can look at your design and say, well, like for me, I've got a fear of inadequacy. And I am a salesperson, fear of missing out star client, because it's like, they're like, well, it's closing in 2 days. You better get in here now. My fear of inadequacy jumps in and goes, damn right, you better get in there and do that, because you don't know enough yet. And what this has done now is allowed me to be aware of it, because once we're aware of something, we can take and look at it in different ways. Versus it, Carl Jung said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it'll control our life, and we call it fate. But once we pull that out and start to look at it, we can then start to say, I do know enough. And again, I've spent thousands on coaches and certification programs and, books and everything else. And I'm realizing that piece of my design is that fear of inadequacy telling me I better buy that next book. That kind of thing. Does that help? Right. And so it's really how your energy moves in your design.
Okay, so when we're talking about energy here, because a lot of people, when you say energy, they think like being energetic. But what we're talking about is the natural vibrational frequency, the energy that is in everything that is in our world. That's the energy we're talking about.
That's the energy we're talking about.
Just want to clarify that for the listening audience, so that they don't get confused. Be like, oh, this guy's getting more energy.
Well, and here's one of the great conditionings, right? One of the great conditionings that happens. So my type, and there's 5 of them, my type is a generator. A generator has lots of energy because they have motors that are connected, what's called motors. So there's energy centers, there's motors, there's awareness centers, that kind of thing. Projectors design typically do not have especially the sacral energy. They may have some subsequent energy, but what happens is we try to make projectors fit into a generator world. And eventually they burn out because they don't have that energy to be able to do that in a sustained. And quite a few of my clients are older clients now. As they're getting on, it's like disease is now starting to come up because, right, when we're not in energetic flow, our body is at dis-ease, right, which produces disease. And it's interesting how to start to look at, say, well, do you have this? And I can look at your chart and go, well, the stomach is connected here, and let's look and see, does this, and it's just interesting how to start pulling it apart, not to heal anybody, not to be a doctor for anybody, but just to look at some of these things that in your chart that may or may not be in alignment.
That's interesting. And you had mentioned one of the chakras, and that's the thing too with the chakras is those are energy fields, and they're also interconnected with the body. So if you have a chakra that's not balanced, you're susceptible to illness.
Absolutely. And that's human design combines chakras, combines the Chinese I Ching, combines astrology, and combines the Jewish Kabbalah into one modality. And we, in the 1700s, humans mutated from 7-centered beings, chakras, to actually 9-centered beings. So we in human design talk about 9 energy centers versus the 7 chakras. So it actually lets it pull out a little bit more.
Right. I always, when I talk about the chakras to people, I always tell them, we have 7 main chakras, but there are more.
Yeah.
And I don't know a whole lot about the other ones. And, maybe after this conversation, I'll dig a little deeper because I'm curious now as to, okay, I know the throat chakra is, communication. You can end up having a sore throat and not be because you're sick, be because that chakra's out of balance. So the other chakras, I'm wondering what parts of the body are they associated with? Do you happen to know that?
Yeah, well, so let's stay with the throat chakra for a minute, the throat center, right? Chakra center. So the throat center is about communication and manifestation. That's how we make things happen. But it's also connected to the thyroid. So there's, a number of people I've talked to that have suppressed their voice, right? They were designed to talk, and each center, remember I said it combines the Chinese I Ching. So there's 64 gates within our body, and those gates connect the centers into channels, and that's how energy flows.
Is it kind of like the meridians?
In a way, it brings the meridians together. Yes, it really is kind of but so for me, I've got a totally open throat center, totally open. It's not defined. There's no gates in it or anything else. What's called not self behavior of an open throat is attracting attention to yourself. Now, for me, and this is one thing human design has done, is it answered so many questions about my past. So for me, I was Mr. Social. I was always at the networking events. I was always blah, 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 blah. But what I've discovered is because of my profile, I'm meant to speak when the time is right, when the people are in the environment right, and I'm meant to wait to respond, not initiate. So it's been an interesting shift now. And I just went to a networking event last night, one I hadn't been to in a couple of years. And I walked in and I just got this feeling like, oh, this is not correct for me. Because I could just feel, that typical networking stuff going on. Not me anymore. I don't fit into that world anymore. It was just, I stayed for a bit, but after a while I had to go because I was really uncomfortable in my body and figuring that. So each center connects to some piece of the body in some way. The heart center connects to the stomach. The spleen connects to the lymphatic system, right? So, it all kind of connects together in that.
Can we make a song out of that?
Probably. The thigh bone connected to the right. Yeah, the heart
Right,
chakra
exactly.
connected. I like you, Joyce. Have fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so what is your human design? You said that you were a generator. So what else does that, what else does that mean? What does that all encompass?
Yeah. So every type, and there's generators, projectors, manifestors, reflectors, and then manifesting generators. So it's kind of a subtopic of generators. Every type has a strategy and authority. So as a generator, my strategy is to wait to respond. That's yeah. See, you get this? But what are we taught?
That would be hard for me. Is that hard for you?
Oh my God. Because we've been taught, and especially as an entrepreneur, especially into small business, right? Again, I've got a channel that goes from the heart to the spleen. It's called the channel of sales. So in a way, I'm designed to sell, but what I'm not designed to do is sell myself. That's been a huge awareness, like, right? So how do you, as a small business person, how do you, I don't do Facebook Lives and I don't do any of this stuff anymore. I used to, because that's what everybody said you needed to do, but it never felt correct. See, we don't follow what feels correct. We follow what other people are telling us. So generators are way to respond. Projectors, so they're about 70% of the population, generators. Projectors are, their strategy and authority is to be wait to be recognized and invited. That's their strategy. So for projectors, remember, we're saying that most projectors are pushed into a generator world. Most of the time they're not recognized. Most of the time they're not invited. They're just trying to live. And again, they don't have the energy to make those decisions correctly and follow through with them, thus the burnout. Is that making sense?
Yeah, I wonder if I'm a projector.
Yeah, I don't know, right? So we can find out. You can send me your information. I'll run your profile for you.
I did send you my information.
Oh, okay. I'll have to look back at it. So manifestors, true manifestors, are the people that get stuff done. They are the idea folks. Their strategy is to inform. Now, the other side of that is to inform, not to ask permission. Like, I'm going to the store. Think about a manifestor child under a parent that's informing what he's going to do, he or she's going to do, and the parent is trying to teach them respect. No, you have to ask for what you want. No, what happens to that child, right? Now, here's the biggie. A reflector takes 28 to 30 days because they're lunar beings. They don't have an inner authority. It takes them 28 to 30 days to actually make a choice and decision that's correct for them. Imagine how they live in this world.
It sounds like my son. I mean, he doesn't take that long, but as a child and even as a young adult, when he had to make decisions, he would take a long time to make a decision. And I had commented on it, and he said, well, how do you think it feels to be me?
Well, so let me step back to me as a generator. Remember, I said strategy and authority. Everyone has an authority. Mine is emotional clarity. So to make the decisions that are correct for me comes over time. Like, there's no truth in the now for me. Somebody say, you want to go to dinner, or you want to do this, or you want to speak at this event. For me, it's getting into it and feeling if it's correct. I'm not meant to be spontaneous. I've been able to look back at most of my decisions that were ineffective were spontaneous decisions.
Interesting.
So for me, it's now like, okay, listen, can I get back to you on Friday with that? And I'm realizing if they're pushing, like, no, I need an answer today, then the answer is no. It's easier for me now to say no than to say yes and not do it, not follow through, or worse yet, do it half-assed, right? Halfway,
right?
Which was what I would do before, because I was a people pleaser. So I'd say yes, 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 and then I wouldn't follow through on most stuff.
Interesting.
Now I can, when I make that decision, it's correct, I'm able to take my energy and follow through with it.
So how long have you been doing the human design? Because you said it's just been like the past 2 years that you finally have realized stuff. So have you been doing human design with clients for the past 2 years, or is it less?
No, June of 2020, in the kind of middle of COVID, I met a coach, a friend of mine introduced us and said, and I was just going through a divorce and a separation and some different stuff, and said, you two ought to meet. And we met, just great person. And we, I mean, connected like that, right? And at the end, she says, you know, I've got something you might be interested in. Because I had a story. I mean, I was a victim. I was, everybody beat me up and beat, you know, blah, right? And she introduced me to human design. So I've spent about a year going through that for me. And the last year now going through certification to become a guide with human design. I've now brought it into my clients, and already some of the changes have just been unbelievable in my clients, just unbelievable.
Really?
And in me as a coach, because I've stopped trying to tell them what's best for them, right? Which is what most coaches do. Nothing wrong with that. But I'm now able to show them their design, ask them the questions that are coming to me, intuitively coming to me, so that they can make the decision that's correct for them. And that's how my coaching business has now changed.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know what my human design is. And I was looking at the email. The only thing I don't know off the top of my head is my time of birth. Oh, here, I found it in the email. You want me to copy and paste it into the chat?
Yeah. Why don't you do that here real quick?
Okay. I get it all highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
So do you feel like for you that once you learned about human design and where you fit in, do you feel like it just like changed your life?
Oh, absolutely has changed my life. Yes. I am not, do not feel like I am. I look at pictures of me, right? My old pictures, and wonder who was that guy? Now, the neat part about it is that I'm very grateful for that, because what it's allowed me to do, you know, many people would say, God, I wish I'd change this, or I wish I could change that in my life, blah, 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 blah. I don't. I'm grateful for everything I've went through, because it's made me who I am today.
Right. I totally agree. I feel the exact same way. The good, the bad, I would do it over again in an instant.
Yep. Yep.
Because the things that we do go through, they do mold us into, you know, the people that we are. And for instance, when I was young, I had a bunch of girls in the neighborhood that decided to bully me. And they had told other people about me, and I would walk down the street and, you know, they'd be saying mean things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who are these people? I don't even know you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so for me, going into my adulthood, from that experience, I learned that I'm not going to do that to somebody else. If somebody tells me something about somebody, it's like, you know, I'm really sad that you had that negative experience with this person, but I haven't. So I am not going to not talk to them or not consider being their friend because of your experience with them. And not only that, but it's only one side of the story.
Well,
you know, I
so,
just.
So yeah. And so that's conditioning, right? We do that. That's conditioning because we want you to be on my side, or whatever
Right.
the reason, right? That right there is an absolute example of conditioning. And the thing about when you start to understand it is that it's really not meant as harm or malice, because they don't know any better. They don't know any better either.
Right.
And this has been a saving grace for me, because for many years I blame my parents, I blame everything else for my life. And here's the deal: my mom did the best she could do with what she had. And it's interesting with that piece of it, to now be able to have, again, different perception, right? We only look
Right.
at things through a certain perception. But if we stand back, and I'm also starting to really dig deep into a thing called Gene Keys, which is a companion to human design. And he's got a thing called contemplation. And it's all it is stepping back, taking a breath, pausing, right? Because we get that train going and we can't get off, right? Pausing, pivoting, and then merging. So for me now, looking at my life, I've been able to pause, look at it and say, huh, and pivot, and now merge it back into who I am today. And it's just been really, really fun to do that.
That's interesting. And going back to what you were saying about how you would be spontaneous, I agree that being spontaneous, it's like, hey, let's go take a ride down to the beach today. That's a good kind of spontaneous. But then you have the spontaneous, like what you're talking about, to where you're not totally thinking it through. You're not stepping back. You're so excited for the moment that it's just like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, and this is, when we talk about this, right, we're talking big decisions, right? Life-changing decisions. The issue with most people is they don't know what a life-changing decision is. And they don't know how to make the difference. Like, let's go to the beach versus who do I marry? Or what job do I get? So it's really this understanding of how we make our decisions so we can start pulling in that. It was interesting. A friend of mine, as I started to do this, as I said, mine's emotional. So as I started to figure out how I was making decisions, we were at her house one night and, she goes, well, would you like a glass of wine? And I'm like, And she's like, do you want a glass of wine or not? Right. You know what I'm saying? It's just, and I'm like, because I had to be able to pull apart how I made decisions. And you have to do that with everything. Now it's like, yeah, no, I don't want a glass of wine. Or yeah, yes, I do. But it's, again, there's no truth for me in the now. It comes with emotional clarity. So the more I'm not spontaneous in those big decisions, the better my outcomes will probably be. So you, Joyce, your design, and again, my languaging, if you listen to it, this is not who you are. Okay. And many people look at these modalities like DISC. I've taught DISC and been certified in, which is a behavioral system. I'm a high D, or I'm a high E, or a Myers-Briggs. I'm an EFTJ or whatever, right? Any of those letters, right? This human design is your design. Who you show up, who you are, is how you show up in the world, aligned with or not with your design. Okay. So I'm looking at you. One of the things for you is you may not know when enough is enough. Like, our conversation of, I'm just going to push through this. So you're open spleen and you have a totally open splenic center. The downside, or the not self, is you don't know when enough is enough. And society says when you come up against obstacles, what are you supposed to do? Push through them. So that may be for you a not self behavior. So your design is a generator, and your authority is emotional clarity, like mine.
Okay, now I don't totally understand not knowing when enough is enough. Like I'm thinking about how I do things.
Relationships, jobs, work things. Like, you'll know when, God, I ought to get out of this.
Mm-hmm.
You'll know that.
Well, and I'm thinking about it right now, and it's like I have a lot of different things that I would like to do. I'm a very creative person.
Yes, you are.
So, like, I make jewelry, and then and I do organic skincare products. And it's just like, I bought a Cricut so I could do t-shirts and, other items to sell. So is that kind of when, I don't know when enough is enough.
No, not at all. So typically we see that in like relationships, right? People stay in relationships longer than they should, or that benefits them, that serves them, that kind of thing. So for you, if I were to coach you, or we were to look at this, is you've got a channel, you've got a gate of love that comes out of the G center. So I would say for you, a lot of your endeavors come through love. Like that's the energy that because you've got it both conscious and unconscious. The other thing for you, and you've only got 1, 2, 3 full channels, you've got a channel of community, which means that you're here to serve the community. Look at what you're doing with your podcast. Look at what you're doing.
Right.
The downside, the danger, everything has a danger opportunity, right? Sun Tzu said everything, it's actually a universal law called law of polarity. Everything has two sides. So that channel of community for you, you're going to give and give and give and give. Maybe until you don't know enough is enough, like you don't know how to say no.
I do know how to say no. I can say no.
But what you need to be in alignment is it's called a bargain. I'm going to give you this, you give me that. Most people with this channel will give and give and give, but not ask for what they need in return.
I do give. I will give.
I know you will. I see it. And that's the cool part about this, Joyce, is when I'll go through, I do a complimentary session and I'll go through the highlights and people are like, well, how do you know me? It's like, because it's your design. I don't know you, but I know your design. And this is how you're showing up in the world or not.
But see, part of me giving is going back to the love.
Mm-hmm.
I'm passionate and I love to help people
mm-hmm.
to have a better quality of life holistically.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody comes to me and they have an issue and they really like something, but it's not in their budget, well, here, take it.
Yeah. Well, so, okay, perfect conversation. Notice how we talk about it was automatically we go to money with that. I now talk about it as an energy exchange. Here's what I need as an energy. And that could be money. That could be, can we trade services? That could be, because I've got that same, right? I do that same thing, right? And I'm just now learning how to ask for what I need. I'll give you this. Now, again, for me, I give and give and give. Eventually you give out. So now it's like, so what's the energy exchange we can do? You can't do this fee? Okay. What could you do? If you can do anything as an energy exchange, what would it be? So that's the conversation I'm now in with that, is it doesn't have to be, you notice how you went, well, you can't give anything, so I'll just give it to you. That's a one-way energy exchange.
Right.
So for you, it's to cut my recommendation, not a should, not anything else, is for you to be in alignment. It would be about, okay, so what can you give? Can you do $5? Can you do?
I have done that before too. And because I am an empath, I can feel the energy from people. So I know when somebody's lying to me and I know when they're telling me the truth. Mm-hmm. So if I feel like if I know you're lying to me, then it's going to be like, okay, well, what can you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're very intuitive, and you're very intuitive because you've got that open splenic center. And so you can probably feel, and I don't know if you've done this, start to really pull it away. You can probably feel fear more than anything else. Like you can feel if somebody's fearful, because the splenic center is about survival. And with an open splenic center, the way you have it, that's like you can feel people's fear. And it was interesting. Again, a friend of mine, we went to this kind of a castle this guy's building. And we walked in and automatic, she's just like, whoa. And I'm like, what? She goes, she could just feel the fear from this guy that was inside of there. So it's really understanding how this moves and then what to do with it or not. right? It's not
Right.
that you have to do anything with it. It's or not.
So if people like, after this conversation, I'd like to go off and study a little bit on my own more about human design. Do you have any recommendation as far as books or things to watch or websites to
Well,
visit?
yeah, so you can go on YouTube and Google human design. There are videos on there from the creator, Ra Uru. The leading education is the International Human Design Society School. And they do classes and they do so there's lots of stuff out there to be able to look at that. The best bet is to find somebody that will walk you through your chart. That's the biggest thing. And that's what I do is I've got a couple different options for people to do that. Because once you get it, then you start to raise your awareness of who that designed for you.
So let's talk about that. What, if people want to work with you, what can they expect and how could they do that?
Yeah, I've got 3 options. One's complimentary. It's a 30-minute session. I base 30, 45 minutes, basically pull up your design like this, and I run through the highlights. Just kind of an awareness of how it works, how energy's moving through you, that kind of thing. So that's complimentary. And if people go to my website, www.focuspointsolution.com, there's a link there that they can schedule that session. I also do a 1 session where we go deeper. That's like I think it's on there for $4.95 or I don't even remember what I've put on there now but it's on my website. And then I do a coaching where I take this and we go into a 12 session, your sessions, whenever you want to do them, you bring, so the first 3 are kind of human design, like who are you, what's your workings, and then you bring your topic to each session and we look at where that is. And that's where the deconditioning really starts, is that conditioning we have is not ours typically.
Right.
But we've accepted it, right? We've accepted the story, we're attached to it. And what I found is once you discover this design, you can really look at and discover the conditioning and then detach from the conditioning. The conditioning never goes away, but the detachment can. And that's what I do then in the coaching, is really work with my clients on, I call it tweezering out, pulling away that conditioning, because some of it, condition isn't good or it isn't bad. It just is.
Right.
The question is it effective for you in your life that you want and that you're designed to be? Because that's what this reveals.
And the coaching, you said that's 12 weeks?
Well, it's 12 sessions.
Oh, 12 sessions. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Because most coaches will do that a weekly. I got to meet every week with you. And that's
right.
that's the standard coaching model. And what I found is the first 3 we kind of meet, so you know who you are and your design. And then it's, I've got one guy now, it's about once a month. He's out there playing, he's looking, and I communicate through a thing called Trello. It's a project management board. So they can put questions in and I'll answer them between sessions. And then he'll come in with, here's what I'm doing and here's where I am and what's happening. And I've got one that's doing it every other week. So it's the nice part about it, it's what feels right for you.
Right. So the second option that you have, is there a time frame on that one, just like the coaching?
Yeah, it's 1 session and it's about 60 to 90 minutes, depending on.
Okay.
Yeah. And some people, that's all they need, right? And human design is starting to gather some traction. So again, there's lots of information out there. And just, danger, opportunity, there's lots of information out there. And the danger is there's lots of information out there, right? I mean,
right.
It's that kind of piece.
Well, and that's why I had asked if you would, could refer something, because I'm into the crystals and the herbs and essential oils, and you could go one place and read this and go someplace else and you get something that's totally different. Yeah. So it's like, I've learned the different people that I feel are accredited, and I stick to.
Yeah, I really don't have, excuse me, I got a hair. I mean, there's so many out there. I've gone through a lady called Lavina Archers, and she has been my instructor now for the last year. and really good at what she does. And again, she does coaching and that kind of thing. But it's really important, I think, to find somebody that's correct for you. She does not, and there are some people that, oh my God, they just don't connect. She's got a different style. So it really is, if you're going to find somebody to work with, it's finding somebody that works with you, what feels correct for you.
Right. I agree with that, but I wasn't necessarily talking about working with somebody as much as, like, out of curiosity, I'd like to go and take a deeper look into this for myself.
Yeah. So
So
for
you had
you,
mentioned,
yep. So for you, you've got an open head and an open ajna, which is very open and curious. So what I would recommend for you is to just go search, and whatever comes up and it feels right, click on.
okay,
Because you're not designed, and here's the thing, Joyce, you're not designed to be certain about anything.
okay,
Yeah.
that's kind of not what we're taught, but okay.
Bingo. Thank you to conditioning. That's not what we're taught.
No, and that's the thing too, is, conditioning really stands in the way of people being able to live the life that they were created to live and be the person that they were created to be.
Correct.
So work like what you're doing is really important for people to get a grip of, who they really are.
Yep.
And like you said, to be able to deconstruct.
Yeah. Decondition. Yep.
Decondition. That was where I was trying to think of the word that you used. Yeah. I think it's really, really important to decondition. And there's times when I'll end up laying down on the couch at night and I'll listen to guided meditations.
Yeah.
And I'll fall asleep. And my husband's been like, why are you doing this? I said, I'm reprogramming myself.
Yeah. Bingo. Right. God has given us the most powerful supercomputer that could ever be created, the mind. But just like any other computer, if the operating system is faulty, you're going to get faulty output.
Right.
So once we start to follow what's correct. So for you, the other thing for you is emotional clarity, making decisions when you're clear emotionally. Now, maybe that's a 10% clarity. Doesn't have to be 90 or 100%. Just depends on what the decision. The second piece of that, as in a defined solar plex, that's where the emotional comes from, is you also don't have to explain your decision.
No, I don't.
And but how many times in school are saying, well, Joyce, why'd you come up with that? How'd you come up with that answer, Joyce? Can you show your work, Joyce? No, I just know that that's the answer. Is it correct? Right. Well, yeah, but you got to show your work. That's why for me, I had a hard time in school because of this. I don't know. I could come up with the answer, but then I felt stupid because I couldn't come up with how I did it.
Well, like my husband says, they're on a need to know basis and they don't need to know.
Yeah. So now it's like, you know what? No, I'm not going to come. Well, why? Because I've decided not to come. That's my choice.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing about schools. I mean, they're institutions.
Yes, they are.
It's just another place to brainwash us. And they want us all to fit in this little box.
Yeah.
But we're not all the same. I'm a triangle. You can't put me in a square box.
I know.
I don't fit. So like you, I didn't really do good in school. I questioned, like, why am I here? What am I doing this for? It seemed, and I actually landed up dropping out of high school my freshman year, because when I was going to high school, I thought it was going to be different. I was excited. I thought I was going to have opportunities to indulge in different careers and different jobs I might want to do. I was really excited. And when I got there and found out that was the same garbage I had been doing for the past 8 years, I was like, hell no.
Yep.
Algebra. And where the heck you're using letters as numbers?
Yeah. Why
system.
X? How come not Z or P or Q? Right? Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just like, to me, that was senseless. We have numbers. Why are you going to throw letters into the equation?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you? And why do I need to know this?
Yeah.
I'm not going to use it.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, and I love what you said. So when we look at conditioning, it comes to us in many ways. Our parents,
Yes.
school, religion, right? Those are the three big ones. And they're all meant, when you look at it, and again, when I say this, I don't mean this in a bad way, is they're all meant to control. And I am so excited right now. My daughter, he's 9 months old now, had a son. And I mean, she had him at home, water birth, very holistic. I mean, she did all the, and she's been on this journey with me now for the last couple of years. The minute she could, she texted me his information. And I ran his chart, ran his design, and he is a true manifester. So a manifester is going to do what they're going to do. And he is 9 months old. He's already pulling himself up. She's potty training him. He's cutting teeth. I mean, but others are saying, well, he can't do that yet. I mean, you can't train him. He can't. It's like, yeah, I can.
That's right.
But as a manifester child, with most parents, they try to suppress that child. Manifester childs are the most suppressed because they're the most, right? They're outgoing. They're like, we're gonna get stuff done. We're going. So what do? We put them in a playpen. We cage them.
I didn't use those with my kids. I do not like them. It's
but
like, do you remember Back to the Future? When he goes to his mom's house and the baby's in the playpen,
back in the West.
Get used to those powers.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing, right? And when we start to talk about this conditioning, what they're starting to show now, research showing it's also generational. So we inherit conditioning through generations. And this is the fun part that I'm working with a couple of my clients right now, is they have the opportunity to break that conditioning. They have the opportunity to make that generational break and not pass it on. But most of us don't know that. We just inherit it. It just comes into us because conditioning is actually cellular. And so that's
kind of like trauma too, inheriting.
Absolutely it is.
So would you say it was the same thing or that it's different?
Well, so yes, and it's the same thing, and yes, and it's different. Right. Gotcha. The best book that I've read on that is called Your Body Knows, or got it up here somewhere, but it's Your Body Knows, and it knows about trauma. It knows about that. Right. And conditioning is the same way. And people ask me, well, how do I know if I'm living a life of conditioning? I'm like, well, how do you feel? Well, I feel horrible. Yeah, that's probably an indicator then. Right? So for me as a generator, for you also, that piece that's telling us that we're not living in our true self is frustration. So how often do you get frustrated? Right? When you're frustrated, that's your body telling you, hello. And satisfaction, success, is when we are living in alignment. Now, again, not success is what society tells us what success looks like. Success here. Right. Yeah.
Well, Robert, it's been really great time having you on the show. Time has just flown by for us.
I know. I was just looking at the clock. This is awesome. Great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, for being on. Is there anything that you would like to leave the listening audience with?
Yeah, I would invite and encourage your listeners to discover their design. And I believe that if we can discover our design and just start to live with our strategy and our authority, the world will be different, because the world is a mirror of us and we are a mirror of the world. And when we start to align, man, guess what happens to the world? So that would be my words of wisdom.
I love that, and especially considering that we are all interconnected spiritually.
Yeah.
So Robert, thank you again so much for being on the
Joyce,
show.
thank you.
It's been a great conversation. And thank you to the listeners. So wherever you're listening from, enjoy the rest of your day, night, morning. And until next time, keep on shining.
Take care. Be well.